The previous basket is under review.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Basket Under Review podcast. I'm your host, Eamonn Brennan of Buzzer at EamonnBrennan.com. Also of Basket Under Review, a very, very, very good college basketball website that you all need to subscribe to. If you're watching the video on YouTube right now, there's been some upgrades made. I have dug out the old green screen. I'm currently sitting in front of the Indiana Hyper. Shout out to any Indiana grads who used to ball at the Hyper. I've got a great guest today. His name's Brian Rauf. He's also with Basket Under Review. He does great work, and we're going to talk about a piece that he wrote recently and a concept that he brought up that I think is interesting that we're going to kind of blow out and really dig into on the show. First, we need to and want to talk about our sponsor, Homefield. Brian's actually wearing a Homefield shirt right now. It looks great. I am a huge fan of Homefield, as I think kind of anyone who likes college athletics is. I just got a text from Homefield. I think earlier, maybe it was a couple days ago. It's Labor Day weekend, so it's running together. We took a trip with the kids and all that good stuff. But anyway, Homefield texted me about like some crew neck, triple stripe crew neck sweatshirts that look like something your dad would have worn in like 1995, and yet somehow look awesome now. Like that's Homefield's whole deal basically, and they've been crushing it for the start of the college football season, doing drops every weekend. I think it was like boxes and new hats and coats and all sorts of good stuff. So please check out homefieldapparel.com. They sponsor the show. We love them. We're very appreciative to them. And thank you to Homefield for being our sponsor. Okay, Brian, we're in the show. How you doing, man? How's it going?
I'm doing great. As you mentioned, we're recovering after Labor Day weekend, but we're doing okay. We're doing all right.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you, as I mentioned at the top, about your piece that you wrote recently on the site about swing players, the concept of swing players. And we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about the piece. And like I said, I really want to, we're going to go down the list of, top 30, 40 teams, maybe with some deep cuts here or there, and talk about guys that fit this bill for many rosters. And some will go real in depth on, some we can kind of, oh yeah, if this guy's good, then they'll be good type of deal. But first, I kind of wanted to talk to you about your path to Basket Under Review. I know you went to South Carolina, and I always have this question of people. It's not like maybe not quite as extreme as our previous guest Matthew Winnick, who grew up in Toronto and became somehow this extremely dialed in college basketball sicko. But a South Carolina alum, that's a big time football thing. And, I went to Indiana. That was kind of I always loved college basketball growing up, but being in Indiana with the culture kind of really, nailed it down for me. Right. So how did you become such a college basketball guy, given your sort of SC background?
Yeah. South Carolina was where I realized that like doing college basketball stuff was what I wanted to do and made sense as a path for me. I grew up in the Raleigh area in North Carolina. So right in the middle of Duke, UNC, NC State. The Homefield shirt I'm wearing is a UNC Charlotte old school shirt. They dropped the UNC to Charlotte now. My dad had gone there, and so a lot of my earliest memories of basketball were going to Charlotte for those games, going to NC State games, going to UNC games, even a couple of Duke games. And in the Raleigh area, that is what is talked about. It's not the football between the teams. It's not so much your fantasy team. When it gets to November through March, it is just trash talk back and forth about how the basketball team is doing. And so that's what I grew up with. And then my grandpa was a Villanova alum, huge Villanova fan. And so whenever he would come visit, he made sure that we watched the real basketball, as he said, being played in the Big East as opposed to what was happening in the ACC and things. So I grew up around all that. The coolest thing I remember growing up was, I think it was like 2004 NCAA tournament or so, maybe 2005. First round matchup was Charlotte against NC State. It's my dad's school and my mom's school. And they were playing one of those like noon games. So my parents took us out of school and took us to a restaurant to watch like a basketball game, which I thought was like the coolest thing in the world, right? Then I get to South Carolina for school. I wanted the big football experience. I wanted that to be part of like college. I get down there and I'm like starting to talk basketball stuff. And I realized that for most people in the state of South Carolina, college basketball is a 2-month barrier to get you from the end of college football season to the start of college baseball season.
Right.
And everything else after that or before that does not matter. It's just they're operating in those months. So I worked for a radio station. It was one of Sports Talk Radio Network, one of the 3, I think, statewide broadcasts in the country at that time. And it was a great opportunity, but because I knew like basketball stuff, they had me on doing basketball stuff for about 3 years. And that was when I kind of realized that this is what I wanted to do. I've kind of took a winding route through that. I've worked with some awesome people at various stops, most recently at Heat Check and at Sleepers. And now here at Basket Under Review, I've again, as you said in the intro, what we are building, I think, is phenomenal. And what we have already built, I think, is phenomenal. The coverage is great. And I'm happy and honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, let's give a shout out. I mean, I feel like I probably haven't done this enough so far, but we talk to each other about it on the Discord a lot, sort of in our own group. And I think the Discord community, which is large and thriving, talks about it a fair amount. But the quality of content that's happening on a daily basis from the level of writers and the sort of really like incredible detail, intelligence, that you're not really going to find anything quite like it. So sorry to give people a sales pitch at the top of the show, but I think you're 100% right. Like it's really good, and it's a fun thing to be a part of, and I'm really glad to be here. Okay, so you wrote this piece that got me thinking big time, right? It was about the swing players of the 2025-26 season. And I do want to talk about the guys you highlight, because these to you are the guys in the country, right? Like these are the top 5 guys that you think will have the most impact, even if they're not stars for their team, will have sort of the biggest, I guess, delta between what those teams can achieve if those players are good, and if those players are just kind of okay, the team's probably going to suffer. And the number one that you led with was Elliot Cadeau. Completely agree. Think he's a fascinating player at Michigan. But first, how did you kind of think about this concept and come up with it for the piece? Because like I said, like I read this and I was just like, I don't think I've ever seen, beyond like it being a well-written piece and smart and all that good stuff, like I don't know that I've ever seen anyone think about this in the offseason in the same way of like, these guys are actually super important for how good their teams are going to be, but they're not the guys, oh, this guy's going to have, 18 points a game and be the best player on the team, whatever. There's a lot more that goes into it. And so where did you kind of land on this?
Yeah, it's a play on X factor, because you hear a lot of time about like the X factor, the under the radar, not stars, but guys who, when they play well, take the team to another level, right? Yeah. I look at swing players as guys, well, if they don't perform, the team suffers. X factors, I think, like, if they don't perform, it's generally okay, or other guys can step up. But swing players to me are ones where there's not a real backup option for this, right? I think of the 2022 Kansas team, the one in the national championship. There was a great team there, phenomenal everywhere, but they didn't have anybody who could like create things out of chaos, out of structure in the half court, other than Remy Martin. And so I kept like harping on at the time, Remy Martin's going to play a big role for Kansas. Like at some point they're going to need him to do that. Now it took until the second half of the national championship game for that to happen. But they eventually needed that to happen.
It took a while, but he got there eventually.
Yeah, so it took a little bit, but they needed that to happen, and they reached their goals because of that, right? Yeah. And so I kind of took that as like there's oftentimes one guy on a team who can do something that nobody else on that team can do. Now, sometimes it's a minimal factor. Sometimes it's a big factor, where if this guy doesn't do the task he's charged with doing, the team's really going to suffer. And so I wanted to highlight that kind of swing more so than just guys who help the upside of a team.
So you've got, you led with Cadeau.
Yep.
You've got Cohen Carr at Michigan State, TK Simpkins at Oregon, Sanander Frew at Louisville, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. And I looked it up before the podcast too, because I was like, I'm going to say this guy's name. And I already forgot what the Google thing told me, but let's call it Halafanua, Julius Halafanua. I think it's
Juice.
Close enough.
Juice.
Yeah, there he is at Georgetown. And what is the common thread between these guys? I mean, we can talk about them individually if you want to, and maybe we'll skip those teams when we blow it out later. But like,
yeah,
what to you is most interesting about this group of 5 guys, particularly the last one, Juice with Georgetown, that you think is like so crucial to those teams meeting?
Well, I think with Frew and Juice, it's the fact that there are no other like really true big men on those rosters. Georgetown has Iwuchukwu, right, who's come from St. John's after USC. He's been in college long enough to where you don't think that there's going to be a sudden turnaround where he goes from playing 7 minutes per game at St. John's after playing similar minutes at USC to being now a real major contributor.
And he was a big prospect, right? Like
he was, and he had the heart deal before his freshman season at USC, and so it's tough coming back from that, obviously, right? But you're just not going to expect him to slowly turn into somebody who carries your front court. Right. And so I think that puts Juice in a position where he kind of has to. And I hate like kind of being like, I kind of believe in Georgetown this year. But looking at the rosters and things on paper, I kind of believe in Georgetown this year if they can get something from the front court. Right. Like this roster is perfectly built for sophomore year Thomas Sorber.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorber was a big loss. I remember Georgetown fans in the offseason, early offseason when the draft stuff was happening, I remember getting, mailbag entries and a lot of sort of comments and live, we have on my Substack, we have sort of an ongoing live chat that's quieted down in the dead of the offseason, which is understandable. But, during the portal time, it was pretty active still. And there was a lot of like, well, maybe Sorber will stay. Do you think Sorber will stay? And it's just like, I don't know. I for you guys, I hope he does, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, like there was obviously hope there. And given the level of recruit he was, obviously Ed Cooley was going to rely on him in a big way as a freshman, but he wasn't somebody they expected to be one and done. And so you're left with this hole in the middle where Malik Mack, I think, proved he can be a very good player at the Big East level. Year 2 at this level, see if there's another step forward. KJ Lewis has proven at this level. Langston Love has proven at this level, right? You have the backcourt. You brought some transfers in who are going to give you some bench depth, who are proven power conference guys. It's just the hole in the middle. You got to figure out what you're going to do with if you're going to take the next step of this rebuild that Ed Cooley is doing. And so that falls on Juice, right? If he performs well, Georgetown could finish top 4 in the Big East, top 3, even depending on what happens with Creighton. It's a pretty wide open league outside of St. John's and UConn. Right. So that opportunity is there. The flip side of that is he struggles and Georgetown misses the NIT.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a pretty big swing. And so I wanted to capture guys who had that kind of swing it one way or the other for their team.
Yeah. And it's an interesting time and situation at Georgetown, because I think on the one hand, Ed Cooley has been building, right? And you can kind of see the contours of sort of a classic Ed Cooley. I shouldn't say classic, because he's essentially done it at Providence and then kind of maintained Providence's level for a long time. And people kind of, got used to that. But there is a world in which Ed Cooley's teams start like 77th at KenPom and gradually work their way up into the mid 40s and then go on a second weekend tournament run. That's something he's done relatively reliably. And I think part of the reason why Georgetown went kind of out of its way and culturally maybe broke a little bit of a taboo in recruiting another Big East coach away, to sort of just say, okay, we need a floor. Like, we need a guy who is a reliably good coach. And I think the first 2 years, last year there was genuine progress, but I do think in the portal era, there were definite like points last year, definitely the first year, but last year also, where I was like, it's maybe not happening as fast as you'd like. And now is kind of the time, it's not 2015, it's not 2019. Like, you can do this a little bit more quickly. And I wonder if Georgetown fans were thinking it would happen a little bit more quickly. But, to your point, if guys hit their ceilings, then maybe you have a really good Georgetown team on your hands this year. And the previous 2 years kind of go by the wayside, and it's just part of a rebuild.
Right. And again, very uncomfortable being like, yeah, I think Georgetown's going to be good this year because of everything that Georgetown has been. It's much more fun to look at Louisville and be like, hey, they brought in all those guards. Louisville could be awesome.
Yeah.
But
They're
if
going
they
to score
don't have
120 points a game.
Right. But if they don't have an interior presence, it kind of caps what that ceiling is. Meanwhile, if Frew is awesome and just provides rebounding and rim protection and nothing else, that's a team that can make a Final Four and potentially further, right?
Yeah.
So that I wanted to capture that. Cadeau is an interesting piece for me, for Michigan, because you've talked about this on the podcast too, about how North Carolina was like, yeah, you're fine. We're going to spend $14 million on a roster, but we're not going to spend on you.
We're not going to give you 2 or whatever
Right.
it is you want. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Michigan was like, yes, I want that. Like, had their pick of whatever and zeroed in on Cadeau because of, I think, the way on paper he's going to fit in Dusty May's system, what he wants to do. But if that doesn't work, there's not a table setter for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yaxel can be that, but he is so much better as a secondary playmaking hub and somebody who's not in charge of initiating the offense.
Right.
Where Cadeau is. And if he's not, you're going to throw an underclassman or a freshman into that role that isn't ready for it and is more of a combo guard, and you're going to take away a lot of their scoring. So to me, Cadeau is like hits. Michigan is sky's the limit. I think they could be, top 5, top 3 team in the country, Final Four, or we see what happened with North Carolina the last couple of years, and that's just kind of where Michigan is stuck at with Cadeau running the show.
Yeah, and the ball has to move. I mean, I think with Cadeau last year at North Carolina, a lot of that is, maybe some of the sets they were running for RJ where it just kind of, it wasn't like, I don't want to say it was like John Calipari classic, like we're going to run guys off the baseline on pin downs and stuff like that, but it wasn't too far off. There was a fair amount of RJ run around 3 screens and then we'll get you the ball and then you go do what you do. And, the year before last, that was a pretty effective strategy because RJ Davis was like the best or one of the best 3 or 4 players in the country. And he just didn't hit that level last year. And then you kind of leave Cadeau out there stranded, dribbling the ball out a lot of the time. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him. Obviously, Dusty May is a really smart guy. He's going to figure out the best way to sort of, I think, get him at the rim. It would definitely help Cadeau and this is, again, very simplistic analysis that like anyone can say, but it would definitely help him to have a slightly more reliable perimeter jump shot. Like that's not groundbreaking analysis, but that's like, hey man, if you've been in the gym all summer and you can go from whatever he was last year, it was a pretty low percentage, right? It was like in the low 30s, I think. He
had improved from where he was the year before, but yeah, last year was not pretty. It was still at 33-ish%.
Yeah. So, nudge that up to like, okay, we got to guard this guy. Maybe we have to go over on some screens. We have to hard hedge some screens that he's on, that kind of thing. Maybe maybe things open up a little bit more for the whole offense and he looks a little bit better. Okay. All right. The one thing I wanted to ask you before we like name rosters and name some guys.
Yeah.
Really just name some guys. Is who did you leave on the cutting room floor? Who are you guys? Who were some guys that you thought like, this guy's like the 6th on this list or the 8th or the 10th?
Stick with North Carolina. Kyan Evans was one because they're going to ask him to run point where they had not asked him to really run point at Colorado State beforehand. And Clifford ran a lot of those responsibilities and they had a rotating cast. But if he doesn't work out at point, they can throw some Seth Trimble there. And I was talking to Jamie Shaw of On3 about this. They could probably use one of those two in a Tyrese Proctor. Like, let's just get the ball up the court and initiate the offense. You don't need to make plays for anybody.
Right.
So there's some offset there, which is why I did not include him. But I thought about him. I really wanted to put Darren Peterson on the list for the same reason that I put Cohen Carr on the list. It was because all of Kansas's roster is built around him being the guy, right? And if he is not the guy, Kansas is still going to be good. But they're not going to be Kansas. They'll be more like Kansas the last 2 years as opposed to what we've known Bill Self teams to be, right? And Darren Peterson, for all intents and purposes, looks like he's going to come in and average 18 to 20 points a game and be that guy, in which case everything's fine. But if he averages 14 and has some just freshman inconsistencies that are normal even for players of his caliber, I think Kansas is really going to suffer from that. Those were the two that I really kind of looked at and was like, yeah, I want to try and include them, but for one reason or other, I put the other 5 on.
Yeah, and I mean, Peterson's fascinating because, it has happened in his tenure, but it's been a long time, I think, now since Self really just put the ball in the hands of a freshman. Is it like Wiggins and Embiid? Kansas was the last time? Or
yeah.
When is the last time, like, a freshman came into Kansas, Ben McLemore, kind of, and was just like, you run the show. You're the best player. Like, it's been a minute.
Yeah, and the Wiggins was, I think, the last one, because I think he was a year or two after McLemore, if I remember
that may be right.
correctly.
Yeah, I may have.
But even those two was more like, we're gonna run some plays for you and do some things, but you're not in charge of like creating. And Peterson's not necessarily in charge of creating, but there's no Frank Mason, there's no Devontae Graham, there's no like other guy to kind of bail him out. It is, we need you to be the guy from day one. And Peterson is good enough where like, that's a good plan. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't work out, then there's not a plan B.
Yeah. Maybe Flory Badunga is going to just like destroy everyone in his path this year. I mean, look, I think he'll be great.
I
think he's going to be a good, I was going to say I was kind of joking in that, like, I don't think Flory is going to turn into like a, outside in operator like Dirk Nowitzki or something like that. But, he's going to be a good interior player, but you're right. He does need like service. He needs the ball in the right places at the right times. Probably will be a significant lob threat. But again, that all comes out of the backcourt, out of Peterson. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Peterson's an interesting one. Kansas is a team I talked about, I think, like in one of maybe with Will Warren, as it being like a very pivotal year in some ways for Bill Self, because of the past 2 years just kind of being like kind of gross and bad, I mean, like just by their standards, obviously. And like Houston comes in the conference and immediately just starts running the show, and you're like, wow, like, this guy dominated the conference for over a decade and a half, and with the occasional Baylor rising up to the level, and that just has not been the case the past 2 years, even though they sort of went full NIL, got Hunter Dickinson, in theory, built a decent team around him, went out and got guys that they thought were like situationally, shooters and so on and so forth.
Right.
It just has not panned out. Maybe just the Dickinson, KJ Adams, DeJuan Harris thing just was never going to work. I don't know. But it's a weird one.
He had too many of his guys, right? The program guys, because Kansas has won forever with guys like KJ Adams, guys like DeJuan Harris, who were not NBA prospects, but did all the little things and enhanced the team around them. Well, when you have a team full of guys who enhance the team around them but can't carry it themselves, you don't have anybody to carry it. And I think Kansas ran into a little bit of that the last couple of years, but Peterson's a change of pace from that for sure.
For sure. And it's going to be fascinating because, like you said, very different sort of roster makeup, very different, in theory, very different sort of tactical emphasis.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. All right. This is the meat of the show now. We're in the main bit. We're going to stretch out your concept, maybe past the breaking point, possibly to the breaking point. We're going to see how it goes. But we're going to go down just a list of Torvik's preseason rankings, and we're going to nominate guys for basically every roster. Obviously, Houston is number one in his preseason rankings, which I think they'll be number one when the season starts. Makes the most sense to me. They were a bucket away from winning the national title and are bringing back Milos Uzan, Emmanuel Sharp, Joseph Tugler, got a really good class coming in. I think you wrote about Uzan early in the BUR days. I think it might have been your first or second piece as him being sort of key to Houston's ceiling. Do you think it feels like he's the star, but he's also kind of in control of their ceiling in a way where, like, Emmanuel Sharp is obviously an awesome player, but he's going to do what he's going to do. And Uzan maybe has a little bit more of the delta that we were talking about before.
Yeah, I think Uzan's piece as the swing player on this team comes down to what you think of Sharp. Because there are people who think Sharp can be a go-to guy, number one option on a championship level team. And I am not in that camp. I think he's a phenomenal secondary scorer. Like, you put him with his shooting and his defense and the things that he does, I think he's one of those elite number two guys. But he doesn't have the individual shot creation ability, or at least he hasn't shown that to me at the level of like Uzan did in Big 12 play last year, where he looked like a first-team All-American caliber guy. But if you think Sharp is that, I think Sharp can provide a little bit of that. There's the missing piece at the three with this team, where you have the two awesome guards, You know what Tugler is going to be. You know Sinak's going to be really, really good at the very least. He may not be great, but you know you're going to get some high quality play from him. Is Harwell going to slide into that 3 spot? I think he probably will be the first option there, but Ramon Walker, Mercy Miller are your returning options, and neither of them have proven to be like guys who can handle heavy minutes because they've been further back on the bench. We'll see if that happens. That 3 spot to me is kind of where it can be like, okay, Houston has no flaws here, or there is some place where you can get this number 1 team that's going to win the Big 12 again and be a 1 seed and do all of those things. I might throw Harwell as a swing player in there for me because if he hits and shores that up, that starting 5 is beating everybody.
Yeah. Emmanuel Sharp, wherever you come down on your evaluation of the player, buddy, I need you to get a shot off. You got to take the shot. I can't have you dribbling. I can't have you pump faking and dribbling. That was a heartbreaker, especially as someone who picked Houston to win their bracket and thought, man, I am going to look super smart again. This is going to be great. Buddy, you got to shoot the ball. I know it was challenged, but just let it go, bro.
It's the instant reaction because he had the same shot from the same spot like 6 minutes earlier, and Clayton blocked him. Yeah. And so it was the same thing, and you saw it in his head, like, oh, this happened, and then he just like for a split second forgot the situation.
I know it's tough. It's a really tough one because it was purely instinctual, like this guy's going to block the shot, but you don't have time to do anything else. You just got to let it fly. Okay, Duke, number 2. I got to be honest. This is a roster that after kind of obsessing about Duke's roster in the offseason last year and just being like, oh my God, how good is this roster from top to bottom?
Yeah.
And especially with, everyone knew Flag's going to be good. I don't know if everyone thought he was going to be as good in college as he was and that he was going to go into the NBA draft as like, NBA analysts on draft night being like, this is the best prospect since LeBron or whatever. I don't think anyone went in the season with that sort of expectation. But obviously everyone knew he was going to be good. Everyone knew Duke was going to be good. But I think their veterans last year were what I was like Proctor, guys like that were talented when they came in, had a high pedigree, but for whatever reason, draft stock, NIL, stuck around. All of a sudden you've got this roster really that's mixed well with elite freshman talent, transfers like Sion James, those guys. Different look this year. Very freshman heavy, although Malik Brown is still there. And I think Malik Brown is like, maybe the best defender in the country. He's in the top 5 anyway.
He's up there.
But the rest of these guys, I don't know, to be perfectly honest, like I know Cameron and Caden Boozer are going to be good. I have not watched a ton of AAU, EYBL tape, whatever. So tell me about Duke's roster and kind of the guy who has to really destroy it this year for them to justify this ranking.
Duke was so good last year, well, in part because of how good Cooper Flagg was in that freshman class. And I think they'll be so good again this year because they have multiple guys who can do everything or a little bit of everything, right? So there is not one guy who, like, if he doesn't perform, they're toast. That being said, Caden Boozer is like the only point guard here. And Duke just made a Final Four last year without a true point guard. It was a concern I had about them in the season, and it proved to not really matter because you had a number of guys who could pass at eye level, and Flagg was special.
Flagg could play point guard basically anytime he wanted to.
Right. It may matter more this year with stud freshmen who may not be Cooper Flagg level, may just be regular number 1, number 2 overall pick level good, right? As opposed to generational. In that case, I think having a point guard may matter a little bit more. And Boozer is the only one to me, Caden Boozer, the only one to me who fits that mold on here, unless you're going to rely on like Caleb Foster. But we've seen that novel before, or seen that movie play out before. And it hasn't worked out the best for Duke. So if I had to pick one, it would be Caden Boozer for me for the Blue Devils.
Okay. Well, shout out Malik Brown. I think he was injured like midway through the year last year.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people lost sight of, and into the tournament too, right? Like he maybe missed the first couple rounds of the tournament.
He missed the first weekend because he popped the shoulder out again in the ACC tournament. I think
that's right. Yeah. But that guy is a terror, an absolute terror.
He's fantastic.
He can guard anybody. Like he can literally, that is the thing about him that's so special is, a lot of people talk about, oh, he can guard 1 through 4, or he can guard 2 through 5, or whatever. I truly think Malik Brown can guard basically any player in the country.
He can.
with a few exceptions.
Duke frustrated teams so much last year because they just put him on the ball handler coming up the court.
Yeah.
And so normally, you're running screens, you've got going downhill. Now he's being switched on to a guard as opposed to getting a switch onto a big because he started on a big. And the league could cover it. It was a fascinating thing that helped Duke's defense be as good as it was.
Yeah, unbelievable pickup from Duke in the transfer portal from Syracuse last year, and he's going to be a big part this year. Okay, we're going to skip Michigan because we talked about Michigan and Cadeau. Let's go to Purdue, who's number 4 in Bart's early preseason rankings. Don't think it's Braden Smith. Don't think it's Trey Kaufman-Renn. Don't think it's Fletcher Lawyer. So who are we nominating out of the guys that haven't been playing college basketball forever that we know very well?
I'm nominating Clough. I'm nominating Oscar Clough.
Okay.
The first piece I did second piece I did for Basket Under Review was on Purdue's front court because it is awesome on paper, right? Trey Kaufman-Renn, Oscar Clough, Daniel Jacobson in there as he's come back from his injury as well. But none of them stretch the floor. So you run into some of the redundant skill sets that Painter ran into with Trevion Williams and Zach Edey. And the end result was they split time and Purdue was not as good as they could have been. I wonder how that's going to work this year because you have to play Trey Kaufman-Renn and you have to play Oscar Clough together, right? Clough is the one for me who provides much more rim protection than Trey Kaufman-Renn does. He's the one who we've seen stretch out his 3-point range a little bit more than Trey Kaufman-Renn. Purdue is posting some videos this offseason of him shooting the 3. If he's able to do that and not be a 3-point marksman, not be Kyle Filipowski or somebody like that where it's like a legitimate threat, but just makes defenses respect it and you'll shoot it if you're open.
Yeah.
If he can do that, Purdue's offense is otherworldly.
I'm going to go ahead and nominate Daniel Jacobson just because he's 7'4".
Yes.
And, if Matt Painter will be looking at him like the Green Goblin mask all season, like, I got to play this guy. There's no way he's 7'4". I got to put him on the floor. I'm joking. I think Brian's answer is correct. Okay, let's go to Florida. Very, for a defending national championship roster, obviously they did really, really well in the transfer portal. Boogie Flan's a great pickup. I think Xavier Lee's a great pickup, and Bart on his, I don't know how his math works and how he sort of like his algorithm just, I think, automatically sorts guys on the roster based on their previous contributions and so forth. But he's got Xavier Lee like as the 6th contributor, and that may be the case. Like he may come off the bench. I'm not sure, but they have a really interesting roster, including guys, essentially their front 3 that are known quantities that should help make them, again, one of the best front courts in the country. So I'm guessing you're going to go in the backcourt here. What do you think?
I'm going with Hauck because they're going to have him play the 3. I don't know how that's going to go. He was somebody I thought about putting on the list. I didn't because there are other options. CJ Ingram comes in, the high 4-star recruit. They bring in AJ Brown from Ohio. So like there are other options to play the 3, but they're going to start with Hauck there. And their front court is the best in the country in the last season. You could argue if they are the start of this season or not with what Purdue has and some others. Backcourt's going to be good. Some people don't think Xavier Lee is going to transfer over very well, and that may be the case, but I think Boogie Flan's going to be awesome. So you're kind of set there. You're missing the like Elijah Martin piece of this that tied the 2 together so well last year, and you're gonna try Hauck in there and go super big, which could work. Could blow up in your face because you didn't really do it last year, and you're asking somebody who's a true 4 to play a different position. That to me is something that could be very interesting for Florida, which could be the difference between them making the Final Four again, or potentially if the other guys don't work out with Ingram and Brown, being 6 seed, 7 seed in the SEC. Yeah,
that's interesting. I mean, Hauck, I'm going to just say it again because I messed it up the first time. He did shoot, I mean, not on a high volume. He shot 103 threes last year. He made 35 of them. Not terrible. So like he can drift a little bit, right, on the perimeter. But he's not he needs to kind of be around the rim. He did his best stuff in the tournament, particularly, but mostly all season around the rim.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. That is an interesting dynamic for Florida. But you know what? Like they are, as we talked about with Kevin Sweeney a couple weeks ago, they are kind of the prototype for the new wave of coaches thinking about we're going bigger and bigger
Yeah.
in college basketball.
Yeah.
You know, that is kind of what for one, besides Walter Clayton just being
Walter Clayton
unstoppable, is kind of what won them the title last year. Is they and throughout SEC play, they just destroyed you on the glass. They were way bigger than you. They sealed and got easy buckets. They were a force down low, and so that's going to be interesting to see how they play that out. Okay, number 6 on Bart's rankings is BYU. AJ DeBonsa, apparently very good at basketball. We'll see.
Yes.
Richie Saunders is probably, I wouldn't say my favorite player in college basketball, but he's up there just because I felt like last year Igor Demon was the guy who got all of the, lottery pick, blah, blah, blah. And every time you watch BYU play, you're like, Saunders is the best guy on the court, like every single time. And I feel like you talk to Big 12 coaches, they'd say the exact same thing. Like Saunders is the guy we think about more. Like Demon's going to do what he's going to do. He's going to hit threes. He's going to occasionally like get downhill, but like Saunders is the guy who runs their whole show. From there, it's, Robert Wright, Kevin Keita, who is like a rim runner, rim protector guy. So who among, like, that's a really good top 4, obviously, and they paid well for it. Who are you seeing on this BYU roster that fits this bill?
Keita. For me, he was somebody else I thought about for the same reason that Frew and Juice landed on there, because who is the other rebounder rim protector on this roster? It's not there. At least it's not proven to be there. You're going to get scoring. We're like, Richie Saunders may have an off night, right? Well, there's Rob Wright and AJ DeBansa to carry you, right? Or DeBansa, being the star that he is, has a 6 of 20 shooting game or something. Well, Rob Wright just made 5 threes, so it didn't really matter a ton. Keita is the guy to me who has to be dominant on the glass, has to be the rim protector, is great for this team because he doesn't need plays called for him offensively. He's not going to throw a fit if he doesn't get the ball, but he has to do his job if BYU is going to meet being the number 16 in the country in the preseason.
Right. I want to echo this again. I love Richie Saunders. I think he's great. I don't think he's, for a long time, I think my favorite player in college basketball, who was it? I'm just going to go with Saunders right now. There's a couple guys out there who I just like really like watching play. And one of their names escapes me at this point, but it was John L, but he's gone now, so he doesn't count. I was thinking about guys who are playing this year. Okay, Illinois, the Euro team of 2025-26 with Kylan Boswell sort of stuck in there, and Ben Marcus as well. Who's the X Factor guy on this roster? Because I'm just going to nominate Boswell. I think Boswell is like kind of sneakily, like, he had some good stuff at Arizona and he was pretty good last year, but I feel like he has the potential to really take another step this year.
I think Illinois got a number of good options. Boswell is, I think, 1A and Stojakovic is 1B. And I think it depends on what you think Illinois needs most. Because Boswell is they're going to be their top perimeter defender. He gives you some playmaking. He doesn't give you necessarily the shooting, but he can run point. He can play 2. He can guard the opponent's best player. He can get you 12 points a game relatively efficiently, right? If that can take a step forward and be that guy in the perimeter, doing it both ways and doing it defensively, Illinois needs that. If they don't have that, they're going to struggle. Flip side of that, if Boswell just maintains what he did last year, they'll need somebody to take Yakashonis's scoring, which Stojakovic seems to be like the best case for that to happen, which I think makes him valuable as well. I thought about both of them, left them both off the list for that reason, but I think you could go with either one of those and not really be wrong.
For sure. Okay, we're going to move on to St. John's. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. We all know who it is.
Yep.
It's Ian Jackson.
Yeah, I did not include him on the list. He was in the intro because it seemed like
he was in the intro. Yeah,
they're already punting on it because it just doesn't seem to be working, which is going to bode out well for St. John's. But they need him.
Thought?
Yeah,
the guy
they need him to do
like
something.
A 10% assist rate last year is not going to be a point guard in the Big East. Come on, Rick. The point guard's dead. Actually, if the guy I recruited can't play the position, it doesn't exist anymore. I do kind of see what he's. I do kind of see what he's saying, right? Like, I understand what he's saying is that, like, you can, the way we were just talking about it with Duke, you can kind of combine and diffuse those responsibilities across your lineup if you have the right guys for it. And maybe he does, but that is a reversal from a few months ago when that was going to be the point guard for St. John's.
Yeah, he went from calling Ian Jackson St. John's next great point guard, legitimately, to saying, there are no point guards anymore. It's fine. We don't need them.
Yeah, we don't need them. Everybody's just going to kind of do their thing.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a point guard, you're talking about a guy who can't shoot, I believe was the direct quote, which is just hilarious. But okay, we all know who it is. If Jackson is, let's just not even call him a point guard. If he's a capable ball handler, initiator,
yes,
who's also a good shooter, then St. John's is in great shape.
Yes.
If not,
100%.
then St. John's offense may end up looking a bit uncomfortably, even though I think, as I've mentioned on previous podcasts and written about, I do think the Arkansas loss traumatized Patino to a level that he was like, we got to get shooting. We got to get shooting. And went out in the portal, spent all the money that St. John's boosters are putting up, which is significant these days, to get shooting. And got shooting. But did he get a point guard? That remains to be seen. And early returns are maybe not. UCLA. Donovan Dent's gonna be a good player. Who he says, as if it's like analysis. This is the kind of stuff people come for. Who else on this roster? I think Sky Clark's kind of interesting.
Sky Clark is very interesting. I'm going with Xavier Booker.
Okay.
Only rim protector. And if you have him out there as somebody who can protect the rim and be the guy who Michigan State fans wanted him to be for 2 years and who Tom Izzo wanted him to be for 2 years, that's a huge boon for UCLA and a skill set that they don't have. Now, I will say, if he was that guy, he would not be at UCLA. He'd still be at Michigan State or in the NBA. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but I will leave the door open for a change of scenery, a new coach, him blossoming in a new setting there.
Yeah, and you always saw signs with Booker of just like, wow, what a talented player. Like just, huge, long, can shoot it, can do a lot of different things, but just never really got there at Michigan State for whatever reason. And you're right, the change of scenery might help because, Tom Izzo, for all his strengths, is a guy that if he doesn't trust you in certain, sets and certain defensive actions, like he's not going to play you. It's just, right. That's how it works. Like, no, he doesn't, he does care how talented you are. I don't want to oversell it, but he is not going to just be like, look how talented this guy is. Let's just run him out. And, if he blows a back cut, like we're just going to live with it. Like Tom is not going to live with that.
Right.
Okay. Number 10, and we're going slowly, so we have to speed this up, I think, or we're going to be here all night, is UConn.
Terrace Reed. Again, similar thing.
I was just going to say Terrace Reed.
Yeah, only real big guy. If he doesn't work out or perform the way he's going to, or they need him to, you're looking at Raby, I think is how you pronounce his last name, the 7-foot freshman, 4-star kid, to play major minutes, and I don't think Hurley wants that.
Yeah. Okay, Louisville, we're going faster now. We took a lot of time in the top 10, which is fine. But there's a decent chance those are going to be among the best 10, 20 teams in the country all year. But we're on Louisville now, team full of transfers, although not as transfer heavy as they were last year. I've spoken of my admiration for Isaac McNeely in the past. I think he's, shooting the percentage he did at Virginia in the past 2 years is really remarkable given how that offense functioned or basically didn't. But who do you think on this Louisville roster is a ceiling raiser?
Yeah, I went with Frew. Same reason. The other big, just there isn't one. You got Pryor, you got Khalifa.
Yep.
Those are guys who want to play in the perimeter. Frew is your interior guy.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about Louisville earlier, but yeah, you're right. You mentioned Frew in the piece. Okay, Arizona.
Jaden Bradley.
Ooh, the star and the ceiling raiser.
I love Jaden Bradley. I think he is set to have a really, really good season. Take a step forward. He's played next to some awesome guards throughout his career, so he's kind of been limited in just how much he's had the ball in his hands. He's going to have the ball in his hands, but also, Braden Burries is going to shoot. Cole Pete's going to try and score. Delors off the bench is going to score. You need somebody to set the table for all these guys. Bradley's the one who's going to have to make it all go.
Really quick, what do you make of Tommy Lloyd going maybe slightly away from the portal this year and loading up on talented freshmen. Do you think this is I feel like Tommy Lloyd is slightly ahead of the game in some ways. Do you think this is a precursor to like a slightly more balanced return in terms of player recruitment?
It may be. I think it may say something too about the caliber of guys he was able to get this year too, that he hasn't always he's gotten good recruits, but 2 5-stars.
Yeah.
Rice James,
Hey.
Start raising some of the
profile. Was there a clip
there.
the other day of him doing I feel like I saw something on social media the other day of him like trying to dunk. And
yeah.
Like, even his dad was just being like, come on, man. Like, what are you doing?
There is something to be said for, as people focus more on the portal, as people focus more on the international recruiting, there are really good high school players who are more available than they would be otherwise because other staffs have focuses elsewhere. And Lloyd seems to be capitalizing on that.
Yeah. And he was the international recruiting king for a long time. And it seems like people have caught up a little bit now. So, okay. Tennessee, Rick Barnes just got a lifetime contract. That means that, he may coach another 2 or 3 years or whatever. He's pretty far along in his career now. I do like that announcement. It's not like the guy's, 45 or whatever, and he's going to coach there for the next 30 years. But Jacoby Gillespie, awesome player. Again, last year, one of my favorite players in the country. Just thought he was super underrated all year. And Maryland, really got going as the season went along. But where are you on Tennessee and who needs to step up here?
I think Gillespie is super important because they need him to be a star. This will be the first time we've seen Tennessee without Sakai Ziegler in half a decade.
He kind of has to be Ziegler and or the off guards they've had for the last 2 years in some ways, right?
Right, and that's why I'm going with Amari Abram, is because he needs to provide shooting because it's him and Gillespie and nobody else. And I trust Gillespie to carry it over from Maryland at the power conference level. Abrams coming back up from Louisiana Tech. Don't know how that's going to necessarily translate. As you've mentioned, Tennessee's been good at finding those guys who play the roles in this off-guard spot. Abram, to me, is the one who they need to hit more.
Maybe we see a return to the Rick Barnes, because the past few years they've been pretty efficient offensively. They've gone out and gotten transfers and gotten up and down the floor a little bit more in secondary and stuff like that. Maybe this is the year that Rick Barnes just returns to like, we're the nastiest team in the country. And like, we got one guy who can score and everybody else is just going to guard you like a maniac.
It would fit the season after he got a lifetime deal to just go back to ultimate Rick Barnes.
This is my true form. Okay. Kentucky, again, interesting roster. Otega Owe, I think vastly exceeded expectations last year, right? Like he was better than I thought he was going to be coming out of Oklahoma. And you had a situation last year because Uzan was at Oklahoma too, right? Where these guys were like
2 years ago. Yeah. They were together.
Just like, man, that's a, that's a really good bad. Like obviously Oklahoma made the tournament last year, had some success, but boy, oh boy, I know it's hard to retain players these days, but that Oklahoma backcourt, if you could possibly keep them together, would have been unbelievable. But anyway, Kentucky, where are we on Kentucky?
Brandon Garrison. For Kentucky, from the simple fact of Jaden Quainton's injury, right? Yeah. You're going to need him to allow Quainton to get back in the fold, and then be okay handling second tier minutes once Quainton does come back and is fully healthy. Also, if the injury lingers, because tore his ACL in March, like it's not a quick turnaround there. It's a pretty serious injury. You're going to need Garrison to play those minutes in the middle. And so if he can be productive and efficient in those minutes, I think that helps Kentucky certainly. And if he doesn't, then you suddenly went from center being a strength to a real question mark with a team that has a lot of really good guards.
Yeah. Okay. Iowa State is the next. They are, what are they? 16th in Bart's, 15th, pardon me, in Bart's preseason rankings. You actually wrote about Iowa State. We're just going to talk about it now.
Yes.
That they're not quite so much of a rebuilding project as maybe people are talking about, right? Like you, and I think it's an interesting year for TJ in that you do get programs that eventually they kind of get into program mode and you just trust them over time, right? They'll figure it out. And I think the talent here is still really good, right? They still have Taman Lipsy. They still have Momslovich. Like, it's not like they're resetting and you just have to take it on faith. like a classic, like Bo Ryan, Wisconsin team where you're like, who are all these guys that you got from like Eau Claire and they're going to be the 5th best team in the Big Ten? It's not quite that level. But it does seem like people are a little down on Iowa State this year. We can talk about their ceiling raiser guy, but I feel like overall this team's not going to be, they're I think 15th in Torvik's rankings for like a good reason.
They're deep. The Lipsy, Momcilovic, Joshua Jefferson core is a really good trio. Yeah. Like that's a phenomenal trio. The guy to me who swings this, and he's a swing player for me, is Nate Heise. I researching the piece, the best returning trio of players in the country at FMEA.com in terms of just overall BPM, just overall impact, was Houston, right? With Tugler, Sharp, and Uzan. Iowa State was second with Momcilovic, Jefferson, and Heise on the court together. That's not something you would think about. Now, he's not a great defender. Like, he's okay, but he's not a great defender. If you're going to get the most out of like that trio, Momcilovic is also not a phenomenal defender.
Right.
So you're going to have to go kind of away from what Otzelberger has done at Iowa State. So that's on Heise to be like either more than serviceable defensively or be just so good offensively it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing because, again, like I feel like there's a little bit of it, like you kind of wrote about, there's a little bit of a down vibe with Iowa State, and it's partly because of how they finished last year, some of which had to do with injury. But they didn't finish the season well, which, it happens. You go through bad spells, and sometimes that's in the early part of the year, and you recover and you storm through your conference like BYU last year or whatever, and everyone's like, oh my God, look how good this team is. And Iowa State maybe just peaked a little bit early, but that's a solid team. Okay, Arkansas is next. They are actually 16th.
Yeah.
What are we doing with Arkansas? I don't even know what I never know what to do with Cal rosters, and Arkansas, especially Cal era or Arkansas era Cal, pardon me. Man, who knows? I didn't know what to make of them all year last year, and then they ended up being pretty good, and now it's just like whatever.
You're looking at one of the transfer bigs with Ewan from Florida State or Pringle from South Carolina. And because one of them,
Brazil. What about Trayvon Brazil? That guy was awesome.
He's awesome. You're going to have one of those guys play next to Brazil. You're going to see Brazil play the 4, right? And allow him to be more perimeter oriented. And he's a good pick for this too, because if he takes a step forward and is like the guy who his talent says he can be and be an all conference caliber kind of player, it solves a lot of problems for Arkansas. But they don't have a lot of size, and Brazil couldn't handle the post that well defensively. He did okay, but he's much better at the 4. You need a true 5 to emerge for Arkansas if you're going to be Sweet 16 again.
Okay. All right. We talked about Kansas, Darren Peterson. We talked about North Carolina. You mentioned Kyan Evans. Seems fair. Be really interested to see how Luka Bogovic does. Because his tape, from what I've seen, looks honestly really good. Yeah. And I think Carolina fans are like super hyped on him. So that'll be interesting. Let's move to, again, in part because I've talked about North Carolina ad nauseum on this podcast, to the point where even North Carolina fans are like, please, sir, there's too much North Carolina talk. We don't want any more North Carolina talk, mostly because it's been kind of negative. Anyway, Ohio State. Gabe Cupps. Let's throw Gabe Cupps out there. Former Indiana Hoosier.
Can we go with Jake Diebler as the swing guy? He's
okay. I like that. I like that.
The roster to me looks good, but the major question with them is coaching, right? And all jokes aside, if you're gonna pick a player, I think Devin Royal is the guy for me, because he was so good in spurts last season. But you got to be more consistent with your shot selection. You got to show more of a 3-point shot. You have to not just take pull-up middies forever. You need to do a little bit more than that. I think if he does, him and Bruce Thornton can be as good as any duo in the Big Ten outside of Purdue. It's just got to get there.
Right. Yeah, Diebler, again, another coach facing an interesting season this year, because this is kind of what always happens to interim guys if they don't take off flying, is there's a questions start to be asked more quickly than they would be if you went out and conducted the quote unquote national coaching search, as though, the coaching services are out there like, canvassing the country and searching the furthest, there's a guy in D3 who's playing a crazy offensive system. Let's get him. It's like, no, you just pick from the best candidates. Anyway, off on a rant there. Alabama. I'm going to nominate Aiden Holloway as a player who I think maybe he's not a ceiling guy, but for me, a fascinating, like, can you really get to where you saw parts of it at Auburn early on, saw parts of it again a little bit last year, I think, but has not quite got to that, like, this is a 5-star guard, SEC guard, super high level guy.
Him and Phylon next to each other, like as your full-on starting backcourt, is going to be fascinating to me because they can be the best backcourt in the country over Houston, over Purdue. Like that, I think that's on the table for them.
Wow.
They could also be mid-tier in the SEC. And I think a lot of that depends on Holloway, because I think we've seen enough of Phylon to know that he's got the goods. Like he's legit.
He's a great player.
Need to see a little bit more consistency, but we know he's legit. Holloway, we've had one good season, one bad season. What are we looking at here? I'd nominate Aiden Sherrill as well in the middle. Just a real power guy. I know they brought in Noah Williamson from Bucknell, but he is still a little bit more of a face-up guy than a true power big rim protector guy. So Sherrill, to me, I would nominate as well because the best NATO teams have somebody like that in the middle anchoring the defense.
For sure. Okay. Number 21 in Bart's preseason rankings, Vanderbilt, the Vanderbilt Commodores. Mark Byington absolutely got him rolling already, which is, again, I think the JMU to school that is traditionally terrible at a sport pipeline with Kurt Signetti and now Mark Byington going to the SEC's kind of perennially worst program in the last 5 years anyway, right? Like they were good under Stallings, but haven't been for a while, is Vanderbilt. Obviously Signetti's turned Indiana football around. Mike James. What do we think of Mike James? I feel like Mike James is underrated now. He got the stink of Louisville, and now he's like kind of underrated now. What do you think?
He had the stink of Louisville. Frankie Collins.
The Kenny Payne era Louisville put a lot of guys in a bad spot.
Oh my
Careers
goodness!
Were not well served by being there for 2 years.
Oh my goodness! I was going to go Frankie Collins because he's had the stink from like everywhere that he's been. But
that's fair enough.
He has shown some upside, and it was interesting that Vanderbilt and Bennington kind of went on like, all right, yeah, you're our guy. There were options left on the table. It wasn't super late in the window. Like they went and they got Frankie Collins. Same thing they did with AJ Hogard last year, and it worked out pretty well for them. I think they're trying to catch lightning in the bottle twice with Frankie Collins.
Yeah, and I think, look, if you're a program like Vanderbilt or, not even like just a high major program you're not going to have maybe necessarily your pick of the best guys in the country every year, but you can target guys who have played high major minutes at good programs who want to have the ball in their hands a lot. Mm-hmm. You can do a lot worse than Vanderbilt's done the past couple of years. Okay. Number 22, Michigan State. Very interesting year for Michigan State, coming off a fantastic season. Oh, we talked about Cohen Carr. It's Cohen Carr.
Yeah,
be good. Cohen Carr, be good at basketball. Michigan State will be fine.
Yeah, this is a roster of supporting pieces with nobody to support, and Cohen Carr is the only one who's really shown the flashes of being able to be more than that.
Get by people, dunk on them. Michigan State will be in a decent spot. Okay, next, you alluded to them earlier when we were talking about Georgetown in the Big East. It's the Creighton Blue Jays.
Yes.
Where are you here on the player and the team?
I think Creighton is going to be solid no matter what, because you talked about like kind of programs. That's what they are undergrad.
Program mode.
Yeah, they're in program mode. But Blake Harper can make them awesome. The transfer from Howard. He's the only guy who's ever won freshman of the year or newcomer of the year, I think it is in that conference, and player of the year. Now moving up several levels to get to the Big East. If he can be the star, which if he's not the star, it's Josh Dix and Owen Freeman, which was so good for Iowa last year, right, as your focal points. If he can be the guy, Creighton then is probably closer to that UConn St. John's here in the Big East than everybody else.
Okay.
If he's not, then you open the door for a team like Georgetown or Marquette in program mode, filling that third spot. But I think that third spot is Creighton's to lose, and Harper is the guy who's going to make or break it.
Speaking of program mode, I'm happy you brought up Marquette. This is the all-time program mode season in the NIL era for any program ever. Because, Shaka, I think to his credit, designed a system of recruitment and retention that totally cut against what everybody else is doing. And I think that's kind of admirable. Not that there's like a moral quality to it. I'm pro NIL, I'm pro transfer portal, as I've written a gazillion times and talked about. Like, I think it's been a good thing for the sport, good thing for players. Fans maybe kind of suffer a little bit in the exchange, but it's kind of worth it to like let players make the money that they probably deserve. But Shaka has pivoted away from that completely in just, I'm going to recruit and I'm going to develop, and we're not going to take transfers. And that's my promise to you. But in return, hopefully you stay. And now he's at a point where he has to do like a classic rebuild where everybody else is just like reloading in, a matter of a month and a half or whatever. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. All right, let's go to Gonzaga. They're number 24 on Bart's preseason rankings. And we're going to stop at 25, by the way. Or with a couple of maybe some deep cuts, some teams that we bring up. But Gonzaga, Graham Ike, Adam Miller, Jalen Worley. Like, I want to say on my newsletter, reader feedback, for whatever reason, is disproportionately Zags heavy. Like, I don't know why. Maybe because I was nice about them when they weren't winning the national title and people were giving Mark Few a hard time. I really don't know. But I get a lot of Zags updates. And so I think this is a fascinating team that is maybe not quite at they should be top 5. They're one of the most talented teams in the country. Peak Mark Few, with still a lot of pieces that interest me. And this is the last year in the WCC. They maybe do the thing that they've done where they take a couple losses early in the year, and then by the end of the conference play, you're like, this is actually like a top 10 team.
They're going to be fun this year. I don't know if it's going to be a good fun or a bad fun, but it's going to be fun. I think a lot of that comes down to their Braden Smith in this transfer from Colgate, who redshirted last year, getting ready for this season, right? And you have some wild cards. You have Ty and Grant Foster, you have Adam Miller, you have Jalen Worley, guys who are good but are not playmakers. Braden Huff's not a playmaker. Graham Ike spent the last however many years playing with Nemhard.
Yeah.
Like he's used to having like the table set for him, and he's going to thrive that way. Braden Smith's the guy who's going to have to do that. And I think he's the guy Gonzaga's going to turn to first to do so. So he'd be the one that I would go with for the Zags.
Yeah, that's a great call. And I mean, yeah, you're right about Nemhard. And watching his older brother play in the NBA finals was honestly weirdly kind of a good reminder of how good both of them were as college point guards. It's just like, it's fun watching like NBA people talk about like Andrew Nemhard as just, wow, what a heady player, like, and it's just like, he is. We know this already. So yeah, okay. Gonzaga was 24th. USC. Yep. Why is USC ranked 25th? Let's get into that. Rodney Rice is in them. Oh, Chad Baker Mazzara, my guy, older than Luka Doncic, the best stat in college basketball. What do you think about USC?
Chad Baker Mazzara is a swing guy for any team that he plays for. Like just don't get technical fouls. Keep your head on straight.
How is he feeling that day?
Yeah, but like Rodney Rice is going to play point guard for this team. It seems so. If they're actually rolling with that, I think that's a huge swing piece for me, because we've never seen him play point guard at this level before.
Yeah.
He was really awesome as the off-ball guy, as the glue connector piece on that Maryland team. But Gillespie and Queen and Reese were like the top 3, and then Rice was supplementing them, right? He's now stepping into a starting point guard role where he's going to ask to do more than that, which I don't think he necessarily can't do. I think he very well can. But this coming on the heels of the Desmond Claude experiment with the same kind of thing, an unproven player at point guard, playing point guard because he wants to, didn't work out well for USC. So I'm very interested to see how that goes for Musselman.
I just want to say it's great that CBM got his waiver. I couldn't believe that happened. Even though I'm sure it's like totally, it's within the rules or whatever. But, being at the Final Four this year, that Saturday, seeing him get subbed out and then just be angry on the bench the entire time while his team is in the middle of an absolute Final Four battle with like another number 1 seed was just like, Chad, like, dude, he's got bigger stuff's going on right now. Like, who cares if you got subbed out? Anyway, okay. All right. So we did the top 25. Auburn's at 26. Let's go with Cincinnati, because I do feel like it's a very interesting year for Cincinnati. Take a look at their roster. I didn't prompt you on this, obviously.
That's okay. We're ready.
I told you, for our listeners, I told Brian, we'll do the top 20, 25. We'll go down the list and see how it goes. And now I'm just going to throw some random ones at him just to quiz him and make
Cincinnati
him on the spot.
Cincinnati would have been a good one because it probably would have been Jizzle James. But here we are.
Farewell, son.
You're probably throwing with that either Baba Miller or like Day Thomas into bigger roles, both like differing in the backcourt.
I think Day is the one for me. If
I think so too. Like if it's not him, Kirk Kriisa going to be resurrecting what his promise from 4 years ago.
He might have to be. He might have to be without James. Like Kirk Kriisa might have to be, not like he was at Kentucky last year, where he kind of comes off the bench and is kind of a useful guy you throw in or whatever. Like he's going to have to play like the minutes he played at Arizona as a freshman and sophomore.
I think you got a better chance of Day being that guy and like being a star. I think that's kind of what Cincinnati needs.
Yeah. Kirk Kriisa, a player that I've always kind of had questions about. I think he freshman year was like, whoa, he's making some threes and he's a big, he talks. I don't even know if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast. Honestly, it's never happened. It's never come up before, but he's a big trash talker. And I just think he's like kind of just floated around college basketball now for a couple of years. And this is like a moment for him where I think Wes Miller probably had that idea of like, come off the bench, do what you did at Kentucky last year, be that guy, hit a couple threes for us. And now he might have to be an important player.
Yeah, I don't think the West Virginia transfer, I don't think we've seen a transfer like fully derail somebody as much as that West Virginia transfer did for him.
It wasn't great. I think he got paid pretty well though. So
he did. And now like that West Virginia team, that was the year Huggins had his stuff and they were just kind of put it together for a year. Yeah. That was a tough spot for all those guys to be in.
Yeah. That was I believe a Taylor Swift concert, by the way, with Huggins. Okay, Iowa, Bennett Sturts. Just kidding. We're going to go to a different team. Okay, number 42, Indiana, just for fun. Because this is, again, I've talked about this roster a lot, but it's a weird roster in that they have no front court, essentially, other than Reed Bailey. And I feel like Reed Bailey has to be like kind of the second best player on the team for them to really thrive.
He's got to be serviceable in the middle, right? Like he just has to be. But they're also betting on either Tatum Conaway or Lamar Wilkerson being Javon Small almost. Not the same player, but like that, him becoming that at West Virginia was not something we expected. Like he was a good player at Oklahoma State before he came into the system under DeVries at West Virginia. But Javon Small wasn't on anybody's radar. And then he was like, oh, mid-season first team All-American. There's Javon Small being awesome.
He was unbelievable.
He was unbelievable.
He was so good. Like,
yeah.
And after DeVries got hurt, Tucker, obviously not the coach, Darian, his dad, he carried that team through an incredibly good conference, and they should have still gotten in the tournament.
They should have.
Like people forget. Yeah, I wrote about it on Selection Sunday. Like it's hard to like get mad about some of these exclusions, like Indiana being the third team out or whatever, or, whatever, whoever the other teams were. I don't even remember because Bubble Watch just goes in the memory hole the minute it's over. But sometimes you do have to take a step back and write that column on Selection Sunday. Like this team should have gotten the tournament. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't care if Tucker DeVries, when he got hurt, what their record was since. Like,
Right.
Javon Small carried them through a crazy conference, and yeah, I mean, if DeVries can pull performances like that out of, that's interesting. Like, that, not something people have brought up, but if he can pull performances like that out of guys that you maybe don't expect, then you're exceeding what the roster looks like on paper.
Yeah, you don't need either one of those guys, Conway Wilkerson, to be the same player as Javon
Yeah.
Small, but just to be that clear-cut lead guard who can be on an all-conference team.
Yeah.
Like, I think that could be Indiana at another level.
Yeah. Okay, last one, because we talked about them earlier. The epitome of program mode, which is maybe a concept we need to fill out in a later pod, right? Like, this could be an interesting. We could do an all-time program mode teams where you look at the roster and you're just like, I think these guys are going to be bad, and they end up being like a top 25 team. Wisconsin under Bo Ryan, Virginia under Tony Bennett, Kansas in various years. You just kind of trust them. Marquette, last team we're going to talk about. Who on this Marquette team, of all these guys who are, again, I think role players, who have been role players pretty much their entire career, even with Cam Jones last year, let alone 2 years ago, who is the guy who has to like step into some kind of star role, the way, frankly, Bo Ryan used to have a lot with Wisconsin teams, where you'd be like, I don't know who on this team is going to be an all Big Ten player, and he'd find one every year. And I feel like that's the model that Chaka's kind of trying to replicate in a very different era. Who's the guy here?
I have three.
That was a big hesitation.
Yeah, I think like it would have been Ben Gold if we saw more from him last year. But like, last year was the year for him, and it didn't happen. So I don't have belief in it happening again. Chase Ross seems like the guy who would step up and be that guy. He was sort of what Cam Jones was to Tyler Kolek. He was that to Cam Jones last year. So I think Chase Ross probably the guy you're looking at being a star. Or Chase Ross, excuse me. I'm looking at him and Sean Jones. But Sean Jones coming back after the torn ACL, I think could be the one who gives them that added piece, that secondary option, the guy who is a gnat defensively, does a little bit of playmaking, hopefully bumps his scoring up a little bit too. And those are the three guys from Marquette where if they're good, your top three guys are going to be Sean Jones, Chase Ross, and Ben Gold.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's going to be an interesting year for Marquette because, like we said earlier, a very different model of building a program in 2025, 26, not a model that a lot of people are utilizing, and has paid dividends in the last couple of years. But, now is the time in the cycle where 15 years ago, you'd be like, yeah, well, it's a little bit of a rebuilding year. We got some good veterans and we'll build on it, recruit. And now it's like, why don't you go get this guy? Why don't you go get that guy? Just a different setup. Okay, Brian, I think that was a good podcast. I don't know about you. I don't know how you feel about it. How do you feel?
I hope so. It felt good. I hope the listeners enjoyed it too, but I had fun.
I had fun. If the listeners don't enjoy it, then send Brian all your messages on Twitter. Leave me alone completely. No, I'm just kidding. Send all your feedback to @Trilly_Donovan. He just got his Twitter account back. So he's there ready for your messages. But no, thank you very much, Brian. It was fun. Like I said in our pre-show, talked a lot about big concepts all year, sort of all off season, big sort of, is the tournament going to expand? How do you put a roster together? I talked to Coach Ryan Odom last week about sort of the roster building philosophies that you have to have in 2025, 26. So it's nice to just dig into some guys, some players that are important, some teams that are important. And we're going to do a lot more of that as we get into what I think is now, now that it's September, it's really preview season. So we're going to get into it. Everybody, please check out Brian's work on basketundreview.com. He does really great stuff. I've been reading him for a long time, and it's all really good. And thank you for listening. Thank you to our sponsor, Homefield. Thank you to our producer, Corey Aldis, who cleans all the audio up and makes this sound great. Thank you, Corey. And thank you to Basket Under Review. We'll be back next week with another episode. Bye-bye.